So in this episode of AxlWorks, we're going to be discussing rod bolts and going to be challenging the theory that every time you change rod bolts out on stock rods that you need to have your big ends resized. I believe, and we'll find out later on whether this is true or not, that a rod bolt torqued to the approximately the same amount of foot-pounds, whether it be chrome moly or whether it be a torque to yield bolt, should apply the same amount of stress or pressure, clamping force, on the rod. What makes them stronger is the fact that the bolts in torque to yield are in plastic deformation, so they're already stretched and they can easily be further stretched, whereas the ARPs are within what we'd call elastic deformation, where they are still resistant to being stretched any further, therefore they have more resistance to being pulled apart in the engine. Alright, so today we're going to take one of these stock thin rodded VVTi 1UZ rods, and we're going to do an upgrade with these ARP LS1 cracked rod 4330 grade rod bolts, and we're going to check and see if these are going to actually ovalize the bore of this rod. There's a lot of conjecture out there. I've seen a lot of people say anytime you upgrade to ARP studs, due to the extra clamping force, you will be forced then to resize your big ends. But I believe there is a difference between 4340 grade ARPs and the ARP, say, 2000s. Because the recommended torque on these ones, I don't have a rod bolt stretch gauge, but I will make one at some point, but the recommended torque for these things is 40 foot-pounds. The recommended torque for the torque to yield OEM Toyota rod bolts is 18 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. I feel that there is a possibility that these will not be actually inputting any more clamping force onto this rod than these would. I think where the difference lies is that these being torqued to yield are in a plastic deformation state, which means they've already stretched beyond where they would return to normal, and it is easier to continue stretching something that's already been plastically deformed until failure. Whereas these ARPs are in an elastic stretch, and hence why they are reusable, and they will return to their nominal diameters after a few cycles, and so you can reuse them. And therefore, being in an elastic state, these are much stronger. They have much more resistance to being stretched because they're still in a plastic state and not in they're in an elastic state and not in a plastic state of stretch. But we're going to test that today. I've got a dial indicator here, got some tools all set up, got a nice little torque wrench to go with it, and we're going to do some science. Join me for the fun. I'm also going to do these as best to my ability with the correct torques and lube specs and everything else. So with Toyota, when they do their bolts, they recommend only using oil on the threads and underneath the cap of the bolt. ARPs are ARP Super Lube, which I've got somewhere. So we'll be doing both tests with their respective lubes to be creating the most equal and even testing parameters that I can possibly do in my shed. assembly lube. So we'll be using this for the ARPs, and we'll be using oil, engine oil, for the Toyota OEM bolts. Something else worth noticing, that not only, so these bolts at their skinniest dimension are 7.19 millimeters, which means they are still within reusable state, 7.17. These are straight up 8.34 millimeters thick. So they are, not only are they thicker, but they're also in their elastic state still. Alright, let's go. So, we're going to have another crack at this. I'm going to go to 18 foot-pounds for the initial torque. And now we're going to go 90 degrees. Right, there we go. So 90 degrees from there to there, from there to there. Let's put this in. And let's see if this is any better. So measuring it from 12 o'clock. I've got 50, 50, yeah, 55.02, 55.03, which is good. So that is now plus 0.01 larger. Now let's try on the 45. Bang on. And then let's try on the other 45. Plus +3 on the other 45. Plus, this one is plus 0.03, and that one is 0.00. So those are all spot on. So that is with the OEM bolts nice and round. So now let us try the ARPs and see how that goes. Now while I do this other work and torquing up those bolts for the ARPs, go into a little bit why I have the machine vise there and the level, the machine level underneath. The reason for it is that I found that I needed to have the rod really held really well, and I wanted to be as flat as possible. So just nipped it up in the machine vise there. Those are machine parallel faces. The bottom there has the parallel in it, and that is also machined flat. That way I'm getting the flattest possible surface to take the most accurate measurement I can with the dowel gauge. So we're going to go super lube on the underside of the bolts and on the threads. Super lube underside of the head and on the threads. And now we're going to go to 40. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to 20 foot-pounds to initially start with. We'll do them in 20s. Then we'll go 30, and then we'll do 40 foot-pounds for the final. Alright, so that's 20. Now we'll go to 30 foot-pounds. That's 30 foot-pounds. And now we'll go to 40 foot-pounds. Just double checking. Okay. We have it. So this is bang on 52.02 for the vertical. And then our 245s are bang on 5202. And the last one is minus 0.2. Minus 0.3. No, minus 0.2. Minus 0.2. So now I've got minus 0.02. This 45 was, I believe, on, bang on. Yes, it is bang on. So this is 0.00, and the top one was also directly onto it. Let's have a look. Yes, exactly, 52.2. So that was also 0.00. So now, when we do the maths, that's going to tell us exactly where we are.
We're always going to put on a show, we just did. So Mad Mike recovers, unfortunately, if that is much later up there in the
So, it is my belief that to conclude all this, it is my belief that the ARP 2000 bolt rod bolts that are the 4340s that have got part number 134606, which are for SBC LS1 high performance cracked rod. These torqued at 40 foot-pounds, not verified with a stretch gauge, but at 40 foot-pounds, do not require the rod to be resized afterwards, as many places argue that you need to. So the results I wrote down. I had my gauge set to 5502 and the readings for each of the types. So we have a torque to yield bolt, which is plus 0.01, so it was 0.01 larger. ARP was the same. Torque to yield bolt was 0.03 larger. ARP was 0.02 smaller. And then again, torque to yield was 0.03 larger, and the ARP was the same size. Both of these fall into the range of acceptance for the maximum size being 0.020 as per the FSM. Now, none of this is done obviously scientifically to the micron. I'm just a dude in the shed who has a group of mates, and we are quite interested in motorsport engineering in general and machining. And it was just one of the questions we were discussing, is that if you're talking an OEM rod bolt to the same amount of foot-pounds, how could you be adding more clamping force? And you wouldn't be adding more clamping force because you are gone into a plastic state of deformation with the torque to yield bolts, where these ones are still in an elastic state and they're thicker, so they'll have more resistance to being stretched. So there you go. That's my belief, that you do not need to. But obviously, check. Take it to someone and have it checked, because obviously that is numero uno. Like, this is just my particular case with this particular set of rods, that they don't not need to be resized.